I never told my new wife that the Marina she called charming was actually mine. All of it. The boat slips, the chandlery, the little bait shop that smelled like diesel and salt water, the 2 rental cottages tucked behind the live oaks. I let her believe I was just the dock manager, the guy who showed up at 6 every morning in worn jeans and an old Carhartt jacket to make sure the fuel pumps were working and the slip fees got collected. And I did that deliberately because I'd been fooled before, and I wasn't ready to be fooled again. My name is Frank. I'm 64 years old. I live, or I used to live, in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is one of those places that looks like a postcard and hides more underneath than most people realize. I've been here my whole life. My father started Tidewater Marina back in 1971 with a handshake loan and a leased lot on the Beaufort River. And when he passed, it came to me along with a second location in Port Royal and a small storage yard. I'm not a wealthy man by any standard. People in cities would recognize, but I own what I own outright, and I worked every day of my adult life to keep it that way. My first wife, June. We were together 31 years. She knew every square foot of that property, knew the names of half the boat owners, could tell you which slips flooded when a storm came up from the southeast. She died of ovarian cancer 3 years ago, and I'm not going to dwell on that here because this story isn't about grief. It's about what happens when grief makes you careless, and how fast someone else can smell that on you. I met the woman who became my wife at a 4th of July cookout at my buddy Ray's house out on Ladies Island. She was visiting from Savannah, she said. A friend of Ray's cousin. She had silver-streaked hair and a laugh that carried across the yard, and she talked about her late husband, a contractor, she said, passed 2 years prior, in a way that made me feel like I was talking to someone who understood the particular loneliness of being 70% of a pair. Her name was Donna. Donna Alcott, she told me. Widowed, no kids at home anymore, thinking about relocating somewhere quieter. I should have Googled her that night. I know that now. My daughter keeps telling me that, and she's right. But I didn't, because she seemed real and solid and sad, in the same way I was sad. And sometimes that's enough to disarm a man who should know better. We dated for 10 months. She came down to Beaufort on weekends, stayed at a rental on the waterfront, said she loved the slower pace. I showed her the marina early on. I just never told her I owned it. I introduced myself to her as the manager, the dock manager. She asked once, maybe 2 months in, whether it was a good job, and I said it paid the bills and kept me busy, which was true in every sense that mattered. She never pushed further. I noted that even then, but I told myself it meant she wasn't interested in my money. Looking back, I think it meant she was already calculating something else. My daughter Becca was skeptical from the start. She's 38, lives in Colombia, works as a paralegal for a family law firm, which turned out to be more relevant than I could have imagined. The first time I brought Donna to Sunday dinner, Becca was polite, the way you're polite to someone you're not sure about. All the right words, none of the warmth. On the drive home, she called me and said, "Dad, what do you actually know about her?" I told her what I knew. She was quiet for a moment and said, "That's not very much." I told her to give it time. Donna and I got married on a Saturday in April. Small ceremony at the waterfront park, maybe 30 people. Lunch at a place on Bay Street. Becca gave a toast that was warm and careful. The kind of toast that wishes something to be true without quite saying it is. My son-in-law, her husband, Theo, shook my hand at the end of the night and told me he hoped I was happy. I was. Or I thought I was. We moved into my house, which is a 4-bedroom low-country place on a half-acre about a mile from the marina. I've lived there since 1998. The morning after we got back from a long weekend in Savannah, 3 days. Not much of a honeymoon, but neither of us wanted more than that. I woke up early the way I always do and went downstairs to make coffee. Donna was already up. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, and she had papers spread out in front of her. I asked her what she was doing. She looked up and said she'd been thinking about our finances. She said it was time to get things organized now that we were married, and she'd like to have a conversation about combining accounts. I told her I was fine with that conversation, but maybe after coffee. She smiled and said, of course. That evening, she raised it again. She said she'd spoken to someone. She didn't say who, about spousal rights in South Carolina, and she'd learned that as my wife she was entitled to certain things. She said she thought it would be better for both of us if I added her name to my assets. I asked her which assets she meant. She said all of them. The house, the bank accounts, the Marina. I went very still. Not because I was afraid, because something clicked into place that I hadn't let myself hear before. I said, "You know I'm just the dock manager." She said, "I know you own it, Frank. The county property records are public." She said it the same way you'd say something obvious to someone who'd been pretending otherwise. No anger, no accusation, just a statement of fact, delivered with that same easy confidence I'd found charming at Ray's cookout 10 months ago. I kept my face neutral. I told her I appreciated her research. I told her I needed to think about all this. She said she understood, and she went back to her legal pad, and I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time. The next morning, she handed me a document. I don't know where she got it so fast, whether she'd had it prepared before the wedding, or whether she made some calls the night I was sitting upstairs in the dark. It was a quitclaim deed. My name at the top, her name in the grantee line, for the Marina property. Both locations. The storage yard. She slid it across the breakfast table with a pen on top of it, and she said that once the property was in both names, she'd feel more secure. I looked at that document for a long time. Then I folded it in half and set it next to my coffee cup and said I'd need to have my attorney review anything before I signed it. She said that was fine. She said she'd already had someone look at it and it was straightforward. I called Becca from my truck in the Marina parking lot 20 minutes later. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a moment, not surprised, just quiet, and then she said, "Dad, don't sign anything. Don't talk to her again about money tonight. Just go about your day and let me make some calls." Becca is good at what she does. By that afternoon, she had a friend at a Savannah law firm running a background check. By the next morning, she had results. Donna Alcott was not Donna Alcott. Her legal name was Donna Marie Pressler. She had 2 prior marriages. The first ended in divorce in 2009 in Georgia, with a civil judgment against her for fraud related to a jointly owned rental property. The second husband, the contractor she'd told me had passed away, was not dead. He was alive and living in Macon, and had a restraining order against her. The Savannah address she'd given me for 2 years corresponded to a mail forwarding service. There was more. The friend she'd brought to Ray's cookout, the one through whom she'd supposedly been introduced. Becca reached out to Ray, and Ray reached out to his cousin. His cousin had no idea who Donna was. Donna had shown up with someone else, inserted herself into the party, and no one had thought to question it. I sat with all of that for a day. I want to be honest about that. I sat with it because part of me still didn't want it to be true. 10 months of what felt like genuine connection, of shared meals and long drives down Highway 21 and watching storms come in off the water from my porch. I had to grieve that before I could act. I gave myself 24 hours. Then I called my real estate attorney, a man named, well, I won't use his name, but he's been handling my property transactions for 20 years. He told me the quitclaim deed she'd handed me was, in fact, legally coherent, which made it more dangerous, not less. He also told me that a marriage entered into using a false identity is voidable in South Carolina, which means it can be annulled rather than divorced, with different legal implications entirely. He said I needed to file quickly and document everything. He also raised something I hadn't considered. He said, "Do you have anything in writing from her where she uses her false name?" I thought about it. I had the wedding paperwork. She had signed the marriage license as Donna Alcott. That name, he told me, does not correspond to any legal identity with a valid social security number tied to it in this state. He said that was significant. Becca drove down that evening with Theo. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Donna had spread out her legal pad 4 days earlier, and we went over everything. Becca had printed the background check, the civil judgment from 2009, the public record of the restraining order in Bibb County. She had a copy of the marriage license. She had a timeline. Donna was out that evening. She'd mentioned going to see a friend in Bluffton and wouldn't be back until late. I don't know if the friend existed. At that point, I didn't assume anything. Theo, who is a quiet man and doesn't say much unless he means it, looked at all the documents and then looked at me and said, "What do you want to happen here?" I said I wanted her out of my house and out of my life, and I wanted the annulment filed before she had any chance to further complicate things. He nodded and said, "Then that's what we do." Becca filed an emergency petition the next morning through her firm's attorney of record. She also reached out, quietly, to the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office regarding the identity fraud, because signing a legal document, a marriage license under a false name, is a criminal matter in South Carolina, not just a civil one. I went to the Marina that morning and told myself to just work. I talked to the guys on the dock, checked the fuel inventory, called a boat owner whose slip lease was up for renewal. I did the ordinary things because the ordinary things were what I knew how to do. Donna came back to the house around noon. I was there by then. She asked if I'd had time to think about the deed. I told her I had. I told her I'd had my attorney look at it. She asked what he'd said. I told her he'd had some questions about her identification. Something shifted in her face. Not much, she was good at controlling it, but enough. She said she didn't know what I meant. I told her I thought she did. I said her name wasn't Donna Alcott, and that I knew about the 2009 judgment in Georgia, and I knew her second husband was alive in Macon, and I knew she hadn't been introduced to me through Ray's cousin, because Ray's cousin had never met her. She didn't panic. That was the thing that stayed with me afterward. She didn't panic. She sat down in the chair across from me and she looked at me for a long moment, and then she said, "Frank, you have to understand, I was protecting myself. My ex-husband was dangerous. I changed my name for safety reasons." It was a good lie, I'll give her that. It almost landed. I told her I understood that people in difficult situations sometimes had to make hard choices. I told her I also understood that the Bibb County Court had found in favor of her second husband in the restraining order proceeding, which suggested the danger had been going in a different direction than she was describing. I told her that my attorney had filed paperwork that morning and that I needed her to gather her things. She said I couldn't make her leave. She said she was my wife and she had rights. I told her she was welcome to take that up with the Beaufort County Sheriff's deputy, who was going to be at my door in about 40 minutes. She left before the deputy arrived. The annulment was granted 6 weeks later. The marriage, having been contracted under a false legal identity, was deemed void from inception. Not voidable, void. My attorney explained the difference. Voidable means it existed and can be undone. Void means legally it never existed at all. I found that clarifying in a way I hadn't expected. The district attorney's office in Beaufort filed charges related to the fraudulent signing of the marriage license. I don't know where that case stands as of now. These things move slowly. The civil matter. She had apparently opened 2 credit accounts using our combined address in the weeks after the wedding, running up a little over $4,000 before I caught it, is ongoing. I told Becca about the credit accounts, and she made a sound I'd never heard her make before. Halfway between exasperated and impressed. She said, she was running 3 angles at once. I said it seemed like it. Becca said, at least she only got $4,000. I said that was a generous way to look at it. She said she'd learned to look at things generously in her line of work because the alternative would wreck you. I've thought a lot in the months since about what I missed and what I chose not to look at. The lack of curiosity about my finances that I mistook for decency. The way she deferred to me in public and then turned precise and transactional the moment we were alone and legally bound. The friend she had brought to the cookout who nobody could account for. My daughter's voice on the phone that first Sunday night. What do you actually know about her? Not enough. I didn't know enough. And I knew I didn't know enough. And I let myself believe it didn't matter because I was tired of being alone, and she seemed kind, and I wanted that to be sufficient. That's the truth of it. I'm 64 years old, and I wanted it to be sufficient. The Marina is still mine, all of it, the 2 locations, the storage yard, the cottages behind the live oaks. I'm there most mornings by 6 in my worn jeans and my old Carhartt jacket, making sure the fuel pumps are working, talking to the guys on the dock, watching the water. My daughter calls on Sundays. Last week she brought the kids down for the day and we took the skiff out and my granddaughter caught her first red drum off the dock and screamed like it had bitten her before laughing so hard she sat down on the dock boards. That's what I was protecting. That's what I've always been protecting. I'm not angry at myself anymore for wanting to believe in something. But I listen to my instincts now, the way I should have listened to them then. Next time my daughter asks what I know about someone, I'm going to give her a better answer. Or I'm going to wait until I can.